Hi everybody, welcome back to the Quilty Little Christmas Quilt Along. We're going to work through all the projects in the Quilty Little Christmas Gallery Wall collection. I've come up with a schedule. We're launching for Christmas in July, but we're going to take July and August to finish this project. Today is July 11th. We're going to start with our fabric prep, and we'll do the Quilty Little Christmas project first. We're going to do the 2 snowflake blocks and quilt 1A and 1B. I purchased the fabric kit for this project, and I did already cut my fabric. I'm going to show you what I did, and if you need an example watching me cut the fabric, I'll link a video below to the Star Spangled Beauty Quilt Along where I step through how to cut the fabric and actually show myself cutting fabric, but we'll go through detailed examples. I thought I'd show you how much fabric I have left over from the kit. There's quite a bit of fabric left. I even made a couple boo-boos when I was cutting and was able to go back and continue and get the right cuts out of all the right pieces of fabric. So there's a lot here. This would make a great scrap quilt, especially some of these bigger pieces. There's really a lot of fabric left. You can still find this kit if you look online. There are quilt shops and private sellers on Etsy who have the fabric kit, so shop around and check pricing if you want to use the fabric kit. There's a couple ways to organize cutting your fabric. In your instructions, there's a CD with this kit, and there's a document, Gallery Wall Complete Collection Materials Needed. This steps you through the cutting for all of the projects all at one time. That's what I used. We'll go over that in a bit. But there's also project by project guides inside the instruction book. That way, if you're just doing one project, or maybe you want to do extra blocks or make something different, you can do that. Here's an example. Here's the Quilty Little Christmas. Gives you the fabric, and it gives you all the cuts you need. I started here on page 4. This gives you a nice breakdown of all the block names for all the projects, and I'm using Ziploc bags for that. This is where I started, prepping all of my Ziploc bags. Once I had all the bags ready, I printed this document, and as I went down, I checked off everything as I completed it. When you read this document, right here at the top, it tells you the abbreviations for each of the 4 projects. Using the top one here as an example, this is fabric F1, shows you how much you need. See how it says QLC, QLC, that's Quilty Little Christmas. This fabric's used for filler blocks and for the back. You go across looking at the filler blocks, it tells you piece, filler blocks, that you need 2. Now you'll see it says 4.5 by 2.5 or 5 by 3. If you're doing block by block quilting, which I'm going to do for this project, you want to cut from the block by block size listed. Whenever there's a size for block by block, you will cut that instead of the size in the standard size column. The second row here, Quilty Little Christmas again for the back, and it gives you the size 19-inch square. In addition to the written instructions, there's also pictures. Here's fabric F1. This little strip here is just to show you a picture of the fabric. Shows you the piece of the fabric and how you can cut to get the most out of your fabric. This one there's a lot left over, but there are some pieces where it's really important to look at these cutting guides. I think the 2 tightest pieces for this are this F15. You really want to look at how you're cutting your fabric for this one, and the absolute tightest was F20. You only have the tiniest little bit of fabric left over. If you've never cut with these before, again, the strip on the side is a picture of the fabric. When you've got the white fabrics in this collection, a lot of them are white on white, but when I printed them like this one, it shows gray on white. It's actually a white on white. Just be aware of that as you're printing and using the cutting guide. Here's that F20. See, I made a note. Show this one. This fabric's actually used in all of the projects. You can see all the abbreviations are listed here, and we've got all of these cuts of fabric here. Again, here's the picture. So what I do when I have a piece like this, if you're standing at your cutting table, say I would be standing here where my finger is, and I would cut this piece. See how it says 5.5, 4 tall, and then I cut the 3 by 2, and then the 3 by 1.5. and I work my way up the piece of fabric. There's also cutting diagrams on page 6 for your embellishments. If you're using the embellishment kit, I've already cut that and put these in with the blocks where they're being used. Here's how I've organized my fabric. I did try writing over the Sharpie from before. These are the same bags I used for the Star Spangled Beauty. What I ended up doing, since this got kind of messy, was using some tape. This is called label tape. I found it online. It's almost like a heavy-duty washi tape. You can put it on things and take it off things. So I have this on some furniture, some closed drawers where I wrote what's inside the drawer. I also use it to label cords. If I've got anywhere with a lot of computer cords, sewing machine cords, I'll write the name of the cord, wrap it around the cord, and fold it in half, and then you can tell which cord is which. There's 4 projects in the gallery wall collection. I use sticky notes and clips. Here's all the bags clipped together for Quilty Little Christmas. This is the one we're going to start on today. And all my bags for the other projects. I have not cut batting or put the fusible on the back of anything yet. I'm going to do that as I go. To help organize my bags, I'm using this cardboard Moose Munch container. We got a nice gift of Moose Munch for Christmas. It was great. All the different flavors. If you don't know what that is, look that up. Very tasty. And I just keep my bags inside. And we are going to be working on Quilty Little Christmas. I'm going to put that one up top. I'm going to add my embellishments to this as well. I already took out what I need for the blocks. I'll slide that on the bottom. Now everything is right here. My extra fabric I keep in the box, and I put this on the shelf in case I discover I cut something wrong. I can go back in and grab more fabric. On page 7 of your book, we've got our list of stabilizers and our threads. The first one here is a heavy cutaway. I don't have a heavy cutaway. I have a medium cutaway. I'm going to go ahead and substitute with that. I have plenty of the light mesh cutaway, fusible backing, project batting, and wash away topping. For my batting, I've been piling up my scrap batting, and I left myself a note to save these for Kimberbell projects. I do long arm quilting, so anything left over I keep and I fold it up real nice, keep it all together. So I'm using scrap batting for this project. As far as thread colors, I took the key here, went to my thread wall, did a thread grab. I bought these when I started machine embroidery. They came in a big kit of all the different colors and they work great. I'll put the information below. And I tried to pick to match the color key here. As I go, if they don't look like they're matching what I'm working on, I'll just go to the thread wall and pick something else. I use regular machine embroidery needles, nothing fancy. I've got a new needle on my machine and I've wound a bunch of bobbins. Today we're going to work on the first 2 sets of blocks for Quilty Little Christmas. We're going to make 2 snowflake blocks and quilt 1A and 1B. I've got my fabric prepped and ready in the bags for both of these blocks. For the snowflake, it does say to iron fusible backing to the wrong side of the background fabric. I went ahead and did that. Let me show you that. Here's the fabric, and I ironed the fusible on the back. If you've never done that before and you have any questions, let me know. And then I cut the batting. How do you determine which size batting to cut? I go to the last step. It tells you here we're going to square the block to 4.5 inches. I add an inch. I cut my batting at 5.5 inches. We're ready to do the snowflakes. And then I'm also ready for quilt 1A and 1B. I have everything in here, and this does have a piece from the embellishment kit. If you're not using the embellishment kit, just use a different color fabric, whatever you think is going to look good. And for this block, it does tell you to add the fusible backing to the wrong side of all your fabrics and the velveteen. When I added it to the back of the velveteen, that's the dark green, I put a pressing cloth over the top of the velveteen. I didn't know if I could put a hot iron on that or not. It worked fine. You do the front for the fusible and then flip it over and press it on the back. I did the same thing for cutting my batting for these blocks. Go to the last step, which is on page 10. It says we're trimming these to 4.5, so I cut my batting at 5.5. Let's go make some snowflakes. I'm going to be working with 5x7 hoops today. I happen to have 2. I've got 2 ready. We'll make a snowflake and we'll make one of the quilts together. Hand tighten and screwdriver tighten. This is the light mesh cutaway. I'm on my baby lock meridian today. We're going to start with the snowflake. I'm going to be doing block by block quilting, but I don't have the files listed in the book because I did not purchase the quilting bundle for this. Here's what I did. I have everything on USB, a Quilty Little Christmas, And I've loaded some Christmas designs and generic background designs. I've got a Christmas tree. You can see the little Christmas trees. The Christmas tree is called Christmas 3. I purchased that from Kimberbell's website. I've got a generic loops background. That comes from the Clear Blue Tiles Essential Set. I have one called Radial Lines. That came from the Oh So Delightful quilt, which I have yet to make. We need to put that on the list. Comment below if you have that and you want me to make that on the channel. Just nice looking stars. I thought that was a good background. And then we've got swirls from the Clear Blue Tiles as well. Again, nice generic background. And I have one called Winter, which also came off the Clear Blue Tiles. And this has got snowflakes and swirls with it. I need to pick a background quilting design. The one that they use here has houses and gingerbread men. Let's look at the quilts. The snowflakes are right here in the top corner. So whatever I pick, I want to keep it the same since it's on either side. We've got this really nice block here in the center with the Have Yourself a Quilty Little Christmas. I don't want anything that's going to stand out too much and take away from that. How do you know what to use? Let's try them. That way you can get an idea of how you pick something, what they look like. Let's just bring them up one by one. Christmas 3, this is the one that's the trees. You need a 4x4 design. We'll bring that up. And I'll hit set, and then I need to add my embroidery file. So this does take a little bit of time stepping through it. But this way you can look at it and you can decide if you like the way it looks or not. I have to wait for that to come up. There's the Christmas trees in the back. That looks nice. You may not necessarily know that it's Christmas trees. Let's pick another one. I don't know if I want to do the Christmas trees. That's a lot going on in the background. I think I want to try the radial lines. They look like stars. I think that's going to look good. Here's the radial lines. And then let's add our snowflake. I like the way that looks. It's a nice background. It doesn't take away from the pretty embroidery. I'm going to go with that one. Now I need to pick some threads. It says to quilt this with cream, and then I'm going to need, looks like a red and a pink. They're using the deep red and light pink. Let's look at those colors. Here's the reds I picked. This is a real Christmas red. This is what I picked for the deep red. Let's place the deep red next to the light pink. Oh, that looks nice. These will look good with the fabric on that one. I'm going to go ahead and quilt with those two. I did pull a color for cream, but this is really light. On my machine right now, I actually have sort of a light gold. I think I'm going to use that. That's what's on my machine. Put all these next to each other. That's going to look really nice. Let's go ahead and make a snowflake. I'm going to go ahead and step through setting up your block, just in case I went a little bit fast through that when I was looking at the background designs. Everything I have is on USB in the Quilty Little Christmas folder. I'm going with the radial lines block by block for my background. So whatever your background quilting is, you want to go ahead and pull that up. If you're using the one in the instructions, it's KDQ 346 Christmas 16 4x4 horizontal. So I have a 4x4 design right there. Going to hit set, and then on my machine I add, and we're going to add the embroidery block right on top of that in the Quilty Little Christmas folder, and we're doing the snowflake. No applique with this one. This is just what they call a threadwork block. Going to hit set and hit embroidery. I can see at the top the size of my stitch out and which hoops I can use. The small hoop, which I believe is a 4-inch square hoop, is too small for this, but I can use a 5x7. I'll be using the 5x7 today. We're going to start with a batting placement line. You can use any color thread you want. I'm going to use the gold. If it's hard for you to see a light color on the light background, use something that you'll be able to see. Let's stitch our batting placement line. Got your little square. Take your batting, cover up all those lines. Looks good, plenty of room. Remember, I cut this 1 inch bigger than the final trim size of the block. If you want, you can add paper tape. This should stay just fine. We're going to stitch the batting tack down line. Go ahead and take your hoop off the machine, trim off the excess batting, that is on the outside of that tack down line. Once you've got that trimmed, our next step is the fabric placement line. Grab your fabric, make sure it's right side up. This has a white on white print and the fusible is white. Make sure you've got it right side up so you can see that nice print. And you want to completely cover the placement line. You can tape it if you like. We're going to stitch the fabric tack down line. Once that's tacked down, you don't trim it yet. We're going to trim it at the end. The next step is the background quilting. Mine's going to be those radial lines. Once the quilting's done, you want to change to the deep red color. That's this one for me. This came out really nice. It looks like shiny gold on the background. I'm going to change to deep red and we're going to stitch the outer part of the snowflake. The outside red is done. I'm going to change to the pink thread and stitch the inside of the snowflake. My first snowflake is done. I need to make a second. I'll do that off camera. And in case anybody's wondering, here's the thread I use. The gold is this color from Floriani. The deep red is this color. This is Sim thread. I bought it online. And this is the light pink. Go ahead and take your snowflake blocks out of the hoop and set them aside. We'll cut all our blocks together at the end. We're going to work on quilt 1A and 1B. There's a difference here in the stabilizers used if you're doing the block by block, which is what I'm doing on camera, or if you're doing the no quilting, you do all your quilting at the end like a traditional quilt. That's where this heavy cutaway is used. For this video, I am doing block by block. So I've loaded 2 hoops again, 5x7 with my light mesh cutaway. There's 2 quilts. One has the velveteen from the embellishment kit and uses the wash away topping. That's the one pictured here. I'll go ahead and stitch this one out. That way if you've never seen the wash away topping used, we can look at that. The other block is just regular applique where instead of the velveteen and the wash away, it has a piece of fabric. They're essentially done the same. The only thing that's going to be different is the use of the wash away topping with the velveteen. Let's stitch out quilt 1B. This does have background quilting, but it's a heavily embroidered block. Since I'm selecting my own background quilting, I'm going to select something that's got a lot of open space in the background. There's no reason to have something that's really dense. I think I'm going to go with the loops. This comes from Clear Blue Tiles. If you're following the instructions and using the Quilty Little Christmas quilting files, it's KDQ 345 Wavy 9 4x4. I'm going to use this loops 4x4. Go ahead and set that, and then I'm going to add my quilt 1B. Quilt 1A and 1B are the same file. You just change the color of your thread. It'll set that on top of the quilting. See that? You don't really see a lot of that quilting in the background. And for this one, I think I'm going to quilt with a white thread instead of the gold thread. Since there's so much embroidery showing on this, I want to go ahead and have that quilting fade into the background. The fabric for this one from the fabric kit is an off-white with a polka dot. This off-white thread that I had in the beginning is going to work really well for that. Here's the thread color for this one. I have my 5x7 hoop ready. I also put in a new bobbin. This is really heavy embroidery. Check your bobbin. We're going to start with our batting placement line. Just like before, put your batting down, make sure you cover that line, and then stitch your batting tack down line. Trim away the extra batting that's outside of that tack down line. Stitch your fabric placement line. Grab your fabric, make sure you cover that placement line, and then stitch the fabric tack down line. Next up is the background quilting. That came out really nice. You can see the quilting, but it doesn't pop like the gold. Our next step is another square, and that's going to be our placement line. When you're doing quilt 1A, you'll have some fabric. We're going to do quilt 1B together to work with the velveteen and the wash away topping. I took my velveteen over to the cutting table and lint rolled it, tried to get the fuzz off of it. You're going to place this, make sure you cover that line that you just stitched, should have plenty of room. Then we're going to stitch the tack down line. Here's the tack down line. It says in the instructions to choose a neutral thread color, which was what was on my machine. But this is a dark fabric. We are going to do some heavy embroidery. We'll see if it covers up that background square. If it doesn't, when you stitch yours, you can pick a thread that blends into your fabric. I also should have put down the wash away topping before I did that. That's what it says in the instructions. But it tacked down just fine. I'm going to put this down now. My guess is the reason we're using the wash away is because this fabric has a nap. So the wash away is going to make sure that it lays nice and flat, and then as your embroidery machine's moving all over, it's not shifting the nap of the fabric and making it look weird. I'm going to cut a little bit of this and then we'll tape that over the velveteen. I've got my piece of the wash away topping. It's kind of like a thin saran wrap. It says to cover the whole piece of velveteen and to tape around. Then we need to change our thread color. If you look at the instructions, you'll see there's a couple sets of threads here. These are for 1A, these are for 1B. These are two of the green colors. The triangle, which is used on both of the quilts, is sage green, and the moon is a leaf green, and this red is just red. I did pull a bunch of different greens. I pulled them yesterday. I'm starting today. Honestly, I'm not sure which one was sage green and leaf green because I didn't make a note, so I just picked some greens. We'll go ahead and change our thread and stitch out the next step. This is the green I'll be using. I think this will stand out against that velveteen. Here's the thread color. Thought I would show you this on my machine. Do you see right here? We're on minute 3 of 29. See the big long space of green? That's what we're going to stitch out. This is a long stitch out. That took 16 minutes in real time. You need to change your thread to the next color. We're on quilt 1B. My machine shows a red color, but refer to your instructions for quilt 1B. You're using the green on the outside. I'm going to change this thread and then stitch the outside. Here's the number for this color thread. On my screen it shows 18 minutes stitched out of 29 minutes. So this is another long stitch out. I just noticed that after I did my tack down, I forgot to trim the velveteen. Do you see that? Before you do all the embroidery, you're supposed to trim this. I didn't do that. What I'm going to do, since this side is already completely done and this side is almost totally done, I'm going to let it finish stitching out. I don't want to trim this and then trim this because then these two sides will look different than this side. So I'll let it finish stitching out and then I'll show you how to get rid of the wash away topping. Then I'm going to have to go in here maybe with some really nice scissors and try and trim it the best I can. If I don't like the way it looks, I can restitch it. For me, it's probably not going to bother me. It'll just make it unique. I'm going to go ahead and let it continue stitching. This is chewing through the battery on my camera, so I'm going to stop the time lapse. This has about another 9 minutes to go. This is all stitched out. That took about half an hour. What I'm going to do is get the tape off and take these really sharp snips and start trimming out the velveteen because I forgot to trim around the block. While I'm doing that, I'm going to stitch out the other one because I know this is going to take some time. That's going to take time to stitch out. And then I'll come back and show you how to remove the wash away topping. Here's my 1A. I remembered to trim around the fabric before doing the outside red. My machine did break a needle though doing this outside red. This is pretty intense stitching. Let's look at the one I had to trim. This came in handy when I was trimming that velveteen. It was like cutting into Minky. Fuzz everywhere. Let's see how it turned out. Here comes the big reveal. It looks fine. I'm actually pretty pleased with it. It almost looks like there's an outline on the outside on purpose. It came out a lot better than I thought. I did have to get a pair of really, really sharp scissors. I have these Karen K Buckley scissors. These are super sharp. I took my time going in and out of the notches, and I had to be really careful because you can't get all the way up to the thread because you might actually trim the thread. There's two more things I need to do to finish this block. First, I need to get rid of this wash away topping. We'll do that together. And then I'm actually going to put a little bit of fray check around the edges just in case I happen to snip the thread and maybe I haven't noticed it yet. I want to make sure none of this unravels. While the other block was stitching and after I had this all trimmed, I took a scrap piece of velveteen and I put it on white fabric and I got it wet and I scrubbed it. It's color fast. It's not going to be a problem. Let's look at the water soluble topping. I have a pair of tweezers here. The first thing I always try to do is see if I can just pull it off. When I took off the outside bit, it came right off really easily. It tore off with the tape. This looks like it may not come off all that easily. It's always easier if you can just tear it off rather than getting your whole block wet. It does tear, so you can get it off this way. You can see the velveteen underneath, but you can see I haven't gotten all the way into the corners. And then I've also got some in some of the little edges around the outside of this block. Up to you if you want to take the time to try and remove the bigger pieces. I'll show you how I generally get rid of the wash away topping. Two easy ways to get rid of this. You can use a spray bottle, a wet sponge brush. You can also use a wet Q-tip, paper towel, Kleenex. You can run it under the faucet, whatever you'd like to do. I'm going to go ahead and spray it. It'll start to dissolve. See? And it comes right off. Just sort of picks off, it melts away. Again, you can do this under a faucet. You can get paper towel, you can get Kleenex, you don't have to use a brush. This works well for doing this on camera. Just dissolves, comes right out. I think I've got most of it off. I'm going to get an up close look and I'm going to spray around the edges and make sure I got everything from the outside of the block. You can feel it. If it feels sticky, that means you've got some of the water soluble topping left. You can take a Kleenex, paper towel, I'm in the sewing room so I don't have a washcloth, and press down to get rid of the excess moisture. Get it as dry as you can, and then you can just let it lay flat to dry. Looks good. I'm going to take a minute and put some fray check around mine, and then it will have to sit and dry. This is fray check if you've never heard of that before. It helps to prevent frays in your fabric, but since I had to get really close to this with the scissors, I want to make sure none of these threads are going to pull up. It's liquid glue. It dries clear. I'm going to dab some all around the edges. I've got the fray check set for that. I'm going to go stick this outside before we start trimming our blocks. I'm in Arizona. I think it's 112 degrees and 0 humidity. By the time we cut 2 of these and 1 of these, this will probably be close to dry. Stuff dries really fast this time of year. I've got one of my snowflake blocks here. We're going to use these orange pop rulers. If you've never seen these before, these are made by Kimberbell. These are the square. There's also one bigger than this. There's a square and a rectangle set. We're trimming all of these blocks to the same size. They're all going to trim to 4.5 inches square. These work a little different than a regular ruler. You cut on the inside and you cut on the left this way. They have notches, so when you start, you set your rotary cutter here, and you push it as far to the left as you can, go all the way up into the notch, and go all the way around. I've got an Omni-Grid rotating cutting mat. I'll put the information in the description box below. Any rotating cutting mat helps if you have one. We have this nice outline on our block. We're going to use that to line up the ruler. And if you don't have these rulers, you can use a straight edge. We're trimming right along that line. It ends up being 4.5 inches. Just to show you, this is a 4.5 inch square ruler. If I put that down, the thread is right around that 4.5 inches. So if you have a 4.5 inch square ruler, now's a good time to use it. Straight ruler is fine. I do like to show these since I have them. What's nice about these is when you're trimming something like this that's quilted, that's got a little bit of lift or dimension. These lie on the outside, so they lie flat versus putting a regular ruler on top, which will wobble just a bit, not too much. This is really heavily quilted, but some of the blocks that have a lot going on, these are very convenient to have. Got the 4.5 here, and then I'm going to take the 6.5 and place that around the 4.5. Gives me more room for my hands. Make sure I've got my lines all lined up, and then once I have it lined up, I try not to move it. New rotary blade. I changed all the rotary cutter blades last night. Put it in the notch and bring it as far over this way as I can. Go ahead and cut. And then I'm going to turn it. Try not to move my rulers. And do the remaining 3 sides. There's my snowflake block. I've got one more of these to cut, and then I have the quilt block and the quilt block that's outside drying. Let's go ahead and cut our blocks. We've got all 4 of our blocks done. It's dry. I think it was outside 7 minutes, maybe. It's completely dry. I'm going to put my blocks back in their Ziploc bags so I don't lose them, and then that'll keep them clean. Then when we get to the end, they'll be ready for assembly. Come back on July 18th. We're going to work on Quilty Little Christmas blocks again. Quilt 2, the block called Quilty Little Christmas, and the 4 square blocks. Thank you for joining me for the Quilty Little Christmas Quilt Along. I hope you've enjoyed making your first 4 blocks and seeing what you can do when you make mistakes. Please like, subscribe, and share. We'll be back next week with the next set of blocks. There's lots of Kimberbell fun on my channel. If you've got any questions about anything you've seen today, or if you have a request for a quilt along or a project you'd like to see, please leave it in the comments box below the video. All the products and information will be linked in the description box below the video. I'll see you next time.